Hey guys, it's Miles here at Tactical Hyve with another video on how to shoot a pistol. And based on the last I think it's been about 4 weeks, we saw some comments. A lot of people, they love the information, but they're getting slightly overwhelmed because there's not enough time to practice. So in this video, we're going to review what we've covered thus far in terms of the grip and taking multiple shots. So if you're interested, stay tuned. This video is brought to you by Vetter Holsters. We're big fans of them because they provide a great quality holster at an affordable price, and they offer a wide selection. If you're in the market for a good concealed carry holster, make sure to check them out. We left a link below in the description. Now let's get to the content. All right, welcome back. The past 4 or 5 weeks, we focused on grip because we are now moving into the realm of taking multiple shots rather than single shot engagements. So grip is huge, very critical to understanding. Rather than covering more details to the grip, we want to provide a recap of what we've done thus far because we've read some of the comments. Some people, they appreciate all the information, but it seems like, people are getting a little overwhelmed. So I think this review is going to be very important. And in this review, I'm sure that if you watch the whole thing, there's going to be more details that you pick up. So we discussed first, we want to make sure that when we're gripping our gun, we want to be nice and high and tight on the tang or the beaver tail of the pistol. So with our firing hand, we don't want any space between the web of our hand and right here, the beaver tail or the tang. Nice, high and tight grip. If you don't remember the details to this video, we'll leave a link, somewhere here or below so you can watch the full video. We also talked about how the support hand needs to be nice and high as well. We don't want it here. We don't want it down here, which is called T-cupping. We want to make some space for a support hand by raising our thumb first and then getting this nice and high, nice and tight. Just like the web of our hand, our firing hand is high and tight on the beaver tail or tang, we want our support hand to be nice and high. Now, how high, how tight, it can be a matter of technique, but we definitely want friction. We want contact with the pistol grip here, and we want it to be relatively high to help us establish more leverage over the gun. Because remember, when we take a shot, we don't want this gun flipping out of control. So the more leverage we have, then there's going to be less flip. Okay, so we covered that, nice and high and tight with both our firing hand and our support hand. We then moved on to talking about firing hand grip pressure. We focused primarily on discussing C-clamp pressure, where by providing pressure on the front strap, it can help us bring that muzzle back down. After we take a shot, the muzzle goes up, so front strap pressure can help bring it back down. And then pressure on the back strap will allow us to prevent this muzzle from dipping, okay? It's not going to be the end-all, be-all. There's going to be other things that combined will help it really move in the ideal fashion that we want, but this is a necessary ingredient. We want some backstop here so it doesn't dip. So that was the firing hand grip pressure that we talked about, and I'll leave a link up here or below, so if you missed that video, you can go back to it for all the details. The support hand, we talked about this as well. The support hand, primarily there's going to be pressure left and right, okay? If the firing hand is forward and back, the support hand is left and right. Well, now when doing this, the idea is not to push the gun, turn the muzzle left or right by going left and right. It is literally just to kind of keep it in one place. It is extra support. Is it necessarily needed to keep a gun stable? No, your support hand doesn't necessarily keep a gun stable, but this can help under rapid fire shots. Okay, so here we want left and right pressure. We talked about when we're doing this left and right pressure, there's going to be pressure everywhere else in the grip, but primarily this is left and right. Just like the firing hand is forward and back, when we clamp down with our support hand, then of course some of these fingers, they may wrap around a little bit. There might be some pressure, so it might turn into a little bit of a squeeze. But the primary pressure is forward and back with the firing hand and then left and right with the support hand. But when we meet our hands together, we will have pressure here in the back, okay, near the back strap where both of the meaty areas of our hands meet together. There's gonna be pressure here. And the idea is to keep this human vise together the entire time, meaning when I'm taking shots, I do not want the grip to come apart, okay? So by having a consistent grip, then I will have a consistent pattern in my shots. If my grip starts to break apart, then typically speaking, the result should also not be consistent because your grip isn't consistent. When we talked about grip pressure, we also talked about how hard you should be squeezing. lots of different ways people discuss this, but one of the more simpler things to understand is that you want firm pressure with both hands. And some will even say grip it as hard as you want without doing two things. The most important one is you want to grip firmly without disrupting the sights. If you grip this hard and all of a sudden your sights are shaking or your red dot are shaking, that's a little too much because now your sights are not stable if you want to take an accurate shot. So what you want to do is you want to back down a little bit, let up until it stops shaking. The other point that you need to consider is if you have a hard time articulating your trigger finger quickly, that might mean you're squeezing too hard with your firing hand. So if that is the case, then you want to let loose a little bit with your firing hand. Your support hand pressure will still be strong and firm, but you can let loose a little bit with your firing hand so that you can move your trigger finger quickly. And this is going to be important if you want to be able to shoot quickly down the road. Then we discussed wrist tension, specifically locking your wrists or stiffening your wrists, so that this is going to aid in bringing your muzzle back down to your point of aim after you take a shot. So I take a shot, the muzzle comes down, and I want to come right back to where it started. If you have a limp wrist, then the muzzle is going to really flare or kind of flail all over the place. So you want to make sure it's nice and tight, and from here, when I break shots, there should be less movement so I can take shots sooner. So all four of those elements, leverage, we talked about grip pressure with both the firing hand, the support hand, and then locking wrists, are four key ingredients to shooting faster and accurately when you're taking multiple shots. They are not the end-all be-all, as I've explained many times, but those are four important techniques and concepts that you need to understand in order to progress even further. There's a lot more details, but this is going to take you a long way. So that's a quick review. Now what I want to do is show some dry fire exercise that you can do that just kind of put everything together. And what this is this is something that you can do as a review as well, and it's going to also allow you to develop a mental checklist that you can use on the range whenever you want to, dry fire and live fire. So if you want to do this from the holster, drawing, you absolutely can. I recommend that if you're first starting out or if you haven't really built a good baseline or you're not confident yet with your technique, then don't worry about the draw. That's just going to add more complexity and more things to think about. Just start from compressed ready with your grip. What you're going to do here is everything's the same in terms of trigger pull, all that, prepping your trigger like in week 1, week 2. As we push out here, we are going to now focus on one thing first. That's to make sure we have a nice high and tight grip. If you start off here with a good grip, then you don't really have to worry about it, okay? But you want to make sure that this is as tight as you can be, right? And as you present, nothing is going to break, okay? If you do this from the holster, you need to make sure that you establish, whether it's outside the waistband, appendix, you need to establish a nice high and tight grip. So by the time you draw and bring it out here, everything is nice and high. Okay. If you find yourself when you're dry firing, your support hand is still low or there's space, you have to correct that. So this is probably one of the easier things to do dry fire, because once again, if you start off with a nice high and tight grip, you don't have to worry about this. Going back to those who are going to draw, you need to make sure that you've established it from the holster. Because once you're out here and you're moving and you don't establish it, it's going to be harder. You're going to have to pause here and then correct things. Next, once you have done some reps like this where you know you're nice and high and tight, now what you can do is you can now place the focus on your firing hand C-clamp pressure here. So I'm going to prep my trigger, I'm going to take 2 shots, but as I do that, I want to make sure pressure has not waned anywhere in the process, before, during, after. If I felt some of my front hand, my fingers let go of the front strap a little bit, then I know I need to be more consistent. If I feel that my back, the heel of my palm let up on the back strap, I need to be more consistent. So from here, I push out. As I push out, I prep my trigger, take those shots, reset and prep, finger off the trigger, and then back. So I'll do this from here. Maybe now I'm just going to take 2 shots here. I look at whatever I want to shoot here. I'm going to take multiple shots because that's what we're working on, not single shots. I'm going to push out, prep my trigger, find my target, sights are on top of it. I'm going to take 2 shots, making sure my C-clamp pressure is good. Everything looks good here. My grip hasn't broken out. Finger off the trigger, and I'm back. This is something that you can do as many reps as you want to and as many shots as you want to. Again, I like to use the dry fire mag for this. You don't have to if you don't want to, but I highly, highly recommend this because it's going to allow you to get the exact same tactile feel of your trigger when you're taking, as if you're taking live shots. And later on, you're going to learn that resetting and prepping and understanding the nuances of your trigger is going to make the world of difference. We haven't even covered that yet. So I know some of you may not really see the value in doing a reset and prep and really getting the feel of your trigger, but you will later on. So once we have done this, C-clamp pressure with our support hand, we're just going down the line. We are now going to do our support hand pressures here, make sure we have good grip, and then take those multiple shots. Everything's the same. I get to a reset and prep point. After I break my shots, finger off the trigger, did my pressure, support hand pressure change anywhere in the process? If it did, self-correct. You know what to do. Notice I'm not emphasizing speed and doing lots of reps. I'm emphasizing analyze what you've done after each rep. Make sure it's correct. Then do another one. So it's not about doing a lot of reps at a 25% success rate where your pressure is changing. We want really good reps because this is where you're learning. You're learning the fundamentals that you really need to burn into your subconscious. Okay, so this is where the time to go slow and focus on quality. Later on, we can let some of that slip when we're trying to build speed and when you're doing live fire, accuracy is acceptable. Okay, now the fourth element was stiff wrists. So everything else is the same here. Nothing really changes because we're just working on everything here. We don't need targets. We're presenting. We have our firing hand C-clamp pressure. We're consistent with our support hand pressure. Now we're working on locking our wrists, making sure that there has been wrist tension before, during, and after the process. Okay? It makes life much easier. Once you are comfortable with that, you've gone through all 4 layers, working on leverage, firing hand pressure, support hand pressure, wrist tension, then you can do this from the holster, add some complexity to it. Okay, meaning you could do it from the draw here, then you might want to start from step 1, do you have good leverage? Step 2, firing hand pressure, step 3, so on and so forth. After you do that, then you can combine things where now you might not be isolating anymore. What you might be doing is in your mental checklist, you might draw, you might take 2 shots or 3 shots, reset and prep, and then from here, you might go through your mental checklist. You might go, do I have good leverage? Yes, my grip is nice, high and tight. Do I have good C-clamp pressure with my firing hand? Yep, it's good. Do I have good pressure within my support hand? Yep, it's good. Everything's consistent. Everything is nice and tight here. Good. Are my wrists locked out? Do I have good tension? Good. Good rep. Finger off the trigger. Do it again. All right. So that one I did not isolate. I just did the rep as I would because now by that time maybe things are burned into your subconscious. So now you're just confirming that everything has been burned into your subconscious. You do the rep without thinking about anything specific in terms of what we've covered, but now at the end, you run through that checklist. And if something is missing, let's say your pressure is not quite there with your support hand, what do? Now you want to do reps just focusing in on that, honing in on the support hand pressure. Okay. If you're comfortable with that, things are good, now maybe you can add another layer where now you're doing target transitions where you do 2 shots here, 2 shots there, or 3 shots, whatever, 4 shots. But at the end, you are paying attention to grip pressure. Okay, going through that checklist again. So now it could be from the draw, then doing transitions, or maybe just transitions. But the idea here is there's no magic to this, guys. There's no secret. The idea here now is you're just adding layers. Notice how we started with the basics. Now we're adding layers to this exercise, which for most people, it's going to throw them off because now they're worrying about added movement. Now usually something slips. So that's why we're taking this approach. Okay, so give that a try. Don't feel like there's a black and white way to approach this when you start adding layers to it. What's important is the basics first, what we discussed first, then add anything that can take your mind off of what we're working on so that you can validate. When you run through your checklist, it might throw you off the added movement, and then you're going to validate if everything's good on that checklist. So that's a review of all the grip elements we've talked about thus far when dealing with multiple shot engagements. I know there's a lot to cover. There's a lot of little details. We're going to dive into everything more and more, but that's important for dry fire. You need to start building that checklist into your mind, and it needs to be burned to your subconscious. And the only way to do this is by doing dry fire, dry fire, dry fire, dry fire again, and going over that checklist in your mind. I hope you guys liked today's dry fire session. As always, please give us a thumbs up, comment, subscribe. I will see you guys on Thursday.